Hello and welcome to Sightless Fun, a podcast about board game accessibility for people who are blind and vision impaired. I'm Jed, and with me is Ertay. How are you today, Ertay?
Hey, I'm great, thank you. And yourself?
I'm not too bad. It is a weekend. Weekends are good. Unfortunately, I am a day or part of a day ahead of you, so I'll be back at work tomorrow, but it's been good. Now, today, we are going to be looking at Secret Hitler, a social deduction game, and discussing the use of apps and technology to improve board game accessibility for people who are blind and vision impaired. But first, what have you been playing recently, Ertay?
In the past week, I didn't play much. I only got to play 2 games. The first game that I played was Camel Up. I have a casual group that I'm trying to turn into a regular weekly group. So I'm just giving them some gateway games to start with. That was quite fun. We played 3-player, then 4-player, then another friend arrived. It was 5-player at the end. So played like a few rounds of Camel Up. That was fun to play. For those that do not know, Camel Up is a light betting game where players bet on racing camels. So there's a little bit of luck involved, there's a little bit of strategy involved. All around it's great fun. And a great game to introduce people to board games. But the second game that I played, which was much more intense and much more interesting, was Battlestar Galactica Express, which is a fan-made game, and that's a compressed version of the original Battlestar Galactica, which is a much longer game. The original one lasts like 3 to 4 hours, and this fan-made version is compressed down to last around 1 hour, and it involves more dice rolling and has the hidden traitor mechanic, just like Secret Hitler does, the game that we're going to talk about today. So, yeah.
And we were actually just talking before we started recording here about Battlestar Galactica, because when Ertay said he'd played this Express version, I hadn't heard of it, but I do own Battlestar Galactica, and I've never gotten it to the table, partly because the rulebook looked intimidating for me to read, because it would take quite a bit of time. But maybe that's a better option if it's an Express version.
So the Express version was created by Evan Derrick, is the designer name, and I think they were trying to get it licensed so the game can be published with nice components and everything. But I think they failed to get the Battlestar Galactica license, and they published it under a different name. Now the game is called Dark Moon. It has some small changes, like some mechanics that are with the dice are replaced with cards, but it still keeps the same core ideas of the original BSG Express game. So because I failed to find Dark Moon nearby, I had to just print out the BSG Express version, which I think officially is not available anymore, so it's very, very hard to find it. And I don't think you're allowed to share it with people now that they released the published version.
Yeah.
But yeah, briefly in Battlestar Galactica, like you are in a spaceship that is running away from the robots. They are the Cylons in the show, and there are 2 Cylons that have infiltrated the ship. And they're trying to sabotage the ship while the humans are trying to run away, like jump to light speed and try to escape.
Well, I didn't know the history there behind Dark Moon, so that is interesting. That is interesting indeed. Well, in my case, I'm actually about to wrap up my D&D campaign that I've been running for the past year. I've been running Curse of Strahd for D&D 5th edition. It's been a lot of fun. I really do recommend it. It's a very fun campaign. And so I'm sure by the time this goes up, we will know whether the heroes have triumphed or whether they have all died. I mean, at the moment, everyone has died at least one. Sorry, not everyone, but of the 5 players in the group, 3 of them have died once. Oh, sorry, 2 of them have died once. One of them has died, I think, 3 times. So, a lot of fun. As for board games, I've played a little bit of Magic the Gathering recently. But the guys I played D&D with, there are a few of them there are quite into Magic and have been getting more interested in it because of the release of the core set 2019. Which is still a game I can play with a reading light and a magnifying glass, but it tends to strain my eyes quite a bit to play it for any length of time.
Does it extend the game time?
Not really. I think if you... for me, not really. I mean, like I said, I still have quite a decent ability to read, so long as I can enlarge the material. But I can imagine that if you use it, we'll talk about it more later with using apps to read text to you. It possibly would, because it's quicker. Well, I suppose you can increase the reading speed, but I suspect it probably would a little bit, and it'd get a little clumsy because you've got to hold cards in one hand, and if you have phone in another or magnifying glass in another, it could get a bit clunky there. The other game I played recently is Sagrada, which is a dice placement puzzle game. If you've played Azul or have heard of Azul, it's basically the same thing but with dice instead of tiles. I probably will write about it at some point because it's quite a fun game. It's light. It's easy. It's more of a it's a game that you can play with people who don't game too often, and there is a bit of luck in there. Well, there's a lot of luck in there, but there's also a lot of sort of thinking in terms of placing the dice because of the restrictions on how you place. You can't place the same color dice next to the same color, and you can't place the same number dice next to the same number. So, yeah, it's quite good. It is quite a good game.
Nice. I've looked into Sagrada a bit and was thinking about picking it up, but just looking if I will be able to play it with my very limited sight.
It's a tough one. I couldn't tell you, I don't think.
Yeah, but well, I'm looking forward to your post. So
yeah, and if you can find someone who's already got it, you should give it a shot. I think just to see what it's like. And if you can read or have the ability to magnify standard size D6, what are they, like 6mm? I think it is. Is it 6mm? Or?
For D6, I actually that was the same problem with BSG Express because it uses a lot of dice. And what I did was pick up standard D6 that are engraved, so I can feel the numbers by touch. And if they are custom dice, I just have another player write down an association table. Basically, 1 means this, 2 means the other. And when I roll, because the rolls in BSG are hidden, I just check the numbers and then someone quickly reads the table just so I know what I rolled. If they are complex, you usually memorize them after a few times. So
isn't it great? We've just been talking about games we've recently played, and just inadvertently we're already talking about accessibility and the things we do to play the games that we play, which is pretty fantastic. But now let's move on though. Let's move on to today's featured game, Secret Hitler. Secret Hitler is a social deduction game which is published by Goat, Wolf and Cabbage. What a fantastic company name. It supports 5 to 10 players, although personally I would recommend 7 to 8. I don't know how you feel about that, Ertay. And it plays in about 45 minutes. So, Ertay, would you like to tell us a bit about Secret Hitler and how is it played? What are we doing in Secret Hitler?
Yeah, so in Secret Hitler, you have 2 opposing teams, the liberals and the fascists. The theme is set in 1930s Germany, just before World War II. And the fascists have one special role, the head honcho. Hitler. The liberals are the good guys, fascists are the bad guys, obviously. The liberals have a majority in the beginning. The thing is that the liberals do not have any information about any of the other players. So they do not know whether another player is a liberal or a fascist. Fascists, on the other hand, know who the other fascists are, and they also know who Hitler is. Hitler is a special character that doesn't know who the other liberals or fascists are. The liberals win if they manage to pass 5 liberal policies, or if they manage to kill Hitler during the game, while the fascists win if they pass 6 fascist policies, or manage to get Hitler into the chancellor position after 3 policies are passed. So the way that the game works is, at the beginning, each player gets dealt a card that shows their role, and also gets a party loyalty card, which has the liberal or the fascist party in it. After the parties are dealt, all of the players close their eyes, they extend their hands and make a fist. Hitler raises his thumb, and the fascist players open their eyes. So Hitler raises his thumb, fascist players open their eyes to see who they are and see who Hitler is. Then everyone closes their eyes, Hitler lowers his thumb, and the game can begin. The president can nominate another player as the chancellor. Then all of the players vote whether they accept that office. If the vote fails, the presidency shifts to the next player in clockwise order, and the new president nominates another chancellor, and another voting phase begins. If the voting passes, the president draws 3 policy cards in secret. The president looks at the cards, discards one of the policies, and hands them face down to the chancellor. Then the chancellor can choose one of the policy cards to enact and the other policy card to discard. So this is where problems may occur. For instance, the president may pass a liberal and a fascist policy to the chancellor. If the chancellor happens to be fascist, they can enact the fascist policy and claim that the president passed them 2 fascist policies. So the lying and mind games begin there. When a fascist policy is enacted, there are certain powers that can be triggered. For instance, if in a 7 or 8 player game, the second fascist policy triggers a party investigation power, which means that the current president can investigate any other player's loyalty. So they can look at their party card and then claim whether they're a fascist or a liberal. And in this step, of course, they can lie. For instance, if they're a fascist, they take a liberal's card and then claim that the liberal is a fascist player. Another power that is very important is the power that activates after the 4th and 5th fascist policy, which triggers an assassination. In this step, the current president can eliminate any of the other players. If Hitler is eliminated, the liberals instantly win, while if a liberal player is eliminated, they start to lose the majority that they have. So it is very important for the liberals to figure out who they are in the game so they can control the government with the voting. So that is Secret Hitler. If you do not like the Hitler theme, there are other fan-made versions of the game. The most popular of them is the one called Secret Voldemort, which is from the Harry Potter universe.
Now, you have the print and play version, and it's mad props to the publisher because they've kept that available, which is really good. They're well known for allowing or having their games up free to play, given they've got both Secret Hitler and Cards Against Humanity is what they were first known for. But I actually happen to have backed it on Kickstarter, so I have what I believe is the same as the retail version. I didn't get the special wooden collector's box, I got the standard version. So I just wanted to quickly go over the components that you would get if you purchased the game. So it's it's a really funny shaped box. It's about 15 centimeters by 45 centimeters, I think, which is 6 inches by more than 6 inches
Yeah.
by I think 18 inches
yeah,
if you
18 to
use your
20.
fake measurements. Anyways, you get 3 policy tracker boards, which are double-sided. So there's one does 5 to 6 player, one's 7, 8, and the other's 9, 10. So on one side you have the fascist policy tracker with the different special abilities, and on the other side you just have the liberal policy tracker. So in a game you use whichever relevant fascist side, and then you just use one of the liberal sides because the liberal side never changes. You probably can hear I'm just playing with the box at the moment, actually. You get a bunch of cards, so you've got 10 party cards and 10 roll cards, so your liberals, your fascists, your liberal rolls, your fascist rolls, and the Hitler roll. You've got voting cards, 10 yeses and 10 nos, or rather I should say 10 yeah and 10 nein cards. You have 10 envelopes, which you put the cards into, so you'll have, one party card, one roll card that corresponds to the party, one of each voting card, and you put them in an envelope, and so you hand those out to the players. That's how you would normally assign the roles. And what else? Oh, the policy tiles, of course. So the policy tiles, I think they're actually thick cardboard. I think they're actually about 3 pieces of thick cardboard, squished together. They're very firm. And finally, the last little component, the tiny little component, is the black little anarchy tracker, which is just when we didn't actually touch on it there. It's not really relevant to accessibility, but when President Chancellor pairs are rejected, then the anarchy tracker goes up 1, and when it hits, 3, you just draw the first, or is it 5? You just draw the first policy tile. So, and reset the tracker. But yeah, they're the components you get. I lie. There is one more component that I forgot. There is the President and Chancellor placards. So these are wooden pieces, which would be like if you had your name on your desk and in front of you. So one of them says Chancellor and one of them says President. They're really neat, actually. I do quite like them. But yeah, they're the components you'll get if you buy the game. They're really quite nice, other than the fact that the boxes are really strange shape, so that, good luck fitting it on your shelf. You have to do a bit of Tetris. But it's certainly quite nice components. But anyway, so that's the basics of Secret Hitler. They're the components you get if you buy the game. Now, there are a few little points here where you might be able to tell there's some challenges if you are blind or vision impaired. The first is the role assignment. You've got to have a way to be able to tell what role you are dealt, whether you're a fascist or a liberal, and whether you are Hitler. The next problem is team identification, so you've got to be able to look around the table, identify, if you're a fascist, identify who is on your team, and identify who Hitler is. And that's actually, even for someone who's vision impaired, that's actually quite challenging. Like, for example, for me, with no peripheral vision and sort of poor low light vision, it's tough because all I can see is an eye or a nose. So I have to go around one person at a time, and unless they're looking directly at me, I'm not going to know that they are also a fascist. Plus, finding Hitler's thumb is just good luck with that. The third thing there, it's sort of an issue, is voting. You've got to have a way to be able to tell the yes and no cards apart. It's not such a big one, but it's a minor one nonetheless. Fourth, if you're the president or the chancellor, you need to be able to tell what policies you're able to choose from. So you've got to be able to tell the tiles apart, the 2 different types of tiles apart, I should say. And finally, the only special power that really has a bearing on accessibility is investigation, which comes down to the same thing as the role assignment, is being able to tell when you investigate someone what their party is. Now, the conventional way of dealing with these would be to use tape or braille tape and a braille labeler, to mark the cards. Now, it's actually quite easy to do this for Secret Hitler because there aren't that many. You've got a yes and a no, you've got a Liberal Party, Fascist Party, and the Hitler role. and you've got the fascist and the liberal policy tiles. That's it. That's 7 different types of things that you'd have to mark. It's all single words. It's all small words at that as well. It's quite simple. You probably could.
And you only need to mark half of them because
Yeah,
because there are only
I know
2.
what
You just mark
Yeah.
one, and you know that the other is the opposite of that.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, you don't even have to mark it all really. So it's really easy to sort that out. So in terms of overcoming the challenges of the cards and the tiles, but the one thing that isn't so easy to overcome is that team identification, is being able to go around the table as a fascist and identify who it is that is a fascist that is you're wanting to be working with, and who it is that is Hitler that you want to try get into the chancellor position, or you want to make sure that they're not that there's no suspicion on them and that someone doesn't assassinate them. Otherwise, of course, you will lose the game. But thankfully, there are some other answers that can overcome this challenge. Technological answers. So, Ertay, could you talk a little bit about this app that you have developed that can help people who are blind and vision impaired play Secret Hitler? What was it that motivated you to work on the app, and how can it help them? How can it help people who are blind and vision impaired overcome these challenges?
The main motivation was that I wanted to keep playing the game without being too stressed, and start panicking every time I drew the fascist card and I had to open my eyes to see who the other players were. I'm gonna first share a short funny story. Well, funny for everyone else except me. What happened was I drew the fascist card. So everyone closes their eyes. The fascists open their eyes. Hitler raises their thumb. And I open my eyes. I start scanning around. I saw one of the fascists, but I didn't get to see Hitler's thumb. So I didn't want to ruin the game for everyone else, because it was quite new to everyone, and everyone wanted to be the baddie or be Hitler. And I just kept silent and carried on. I thought I'll figure out during the course of the game who Hitler is. By dumb luck, what happens is I ended up being the president when the second assassination power got activated. So now I had to shoot someone. And of course I had no idea who Hitler was. We were playing, I think, 8 players. So one person was eliminated at that point. So I had 6 other players to choose from. So the chances were 1 out of 6. So what's the worst that can happen? And the worst that happens is a fascist shot Hitler in the face. And when they ask, because when you shoot a player, you ask them, are you Hitler? And they need to truthfully say whether they are or not. And when it was my cousin, when she said, yes, I'm Hitler, I was like, oh my god, no. That was a hilarious moment for everyone, embarrassing moment for me. And after that moment, every time I drew the fascist card, I was super stressed out. So one day before meeting our regular Secret Hitler group, I was thinking about how I can solve the closing eyes problem, and came up with an idea to do it with an app that would randomize the roles. And because I'm still partially sighted, I can see bright text on a dark background. That's how I set the theme of the app. So the background was dark, the foreground text was light, and I could read. Basically, if I was a fascist, I can see who the other fascists are, their names get listed, and who Hitler is. And then once I have the information, there's a timer that counts down. When the next player's name pops up, you just pass the phone to the next player, and they check their own role, passing to the next player until every player has seen their role.
So how is it that it works exactly then? If you were to, if I was to download the app right now and start playing a game of Secret Hitler with my friends, what do we do to set it up and get going?
Yes, so the first thing that you do, so let me just say that the app is currently available on Android only, and it's not on the Play Store because it's still like a prototype, but you can freely download it and sideload it to your phone, and it's made for sighted players, so it might not work as well with the Android screen reader, because other sighted players will mostly operate with it and they will get confused with the screen reader. So it's made to be used by sighted people mostly. So in the app, you first enter every player's name, you add them to a list, and then you just press a button that starts the game, randomizes the roles and assigns them to every player. So the first player's name is shown on the screen, and you have a button to show their role. If they have the liberal role, they only see the word liberal. If they have the fascist role, however, they can see the names of the players that are fascists, and they can see the name of Hitler, who the Hitler player is. There's also a timer that counts down, and when the timer hits 0, the next player can look at their role. So the current player just passes the phone to the next player, and then they click a button again, their role is displayed, they see their role, timer hits 0, they pass to the next player.
It's that simple. There is also, we should add, a button there to speak aloud the text that is on screen. So you do have that option. Just make sure you're wearing earphones when you do that. Otherwise,
yeah, so if the player is blind, you can mark a player blind or as visually impaired, and when it's that player's turn to hear their role, they can just plug in headphones and they hear an audible, a text-to-speech synthesizer basically reads out the names of the players that are the fascists and the name of Hitler if the blind player is a fascist player. Otherwise, he will just hear that he or she is Hitler or a liberal player.
And it's also used, or you can also use it rather, for the investigation part of the game as well, can't you?
Yes, because now people that are familiar with the game already should think that, okay, so how do you solve the investigation part? Because we don't even use the envelopes and the cards in the game. After the roles are assigned, you are taken to a new screen, which is the party investigation screen. And when the party investigation power is activated, you can scroll through the players that are currently playing and read their loyalty.
And once again, the speaking option is also there. So people who are totally blind or who are unable to read the text that is on screen can have that functionality. So, and should also add that you've got it so that the app can be used both for Secret Hitler and the Resistance as well, for those familiar with that game.
Yeah, so that was just a test, because there are a few games that use the same mechanic of closing your eyes and some of the players opening their eyes to see the other players that are in their team. Or in case of the Resistance Avalon, there's a special character called Merlin, which is basically a good guy, and the good guy can see some of the other bad guys. So technically you can use the app for other games like the Resistance, perhaps Werewolf. I think Mafia also has, but I might be mistaken. That same mechanic.
Yeah, I'm not sure how Mafia. I know it is another sort of similar sort of game, and certainly I think any person or any player who's blind and vision impaired who's played these social deduction games, I would be surprised if not all of them had a story like yours where they've murdered Hitler, or in my case, I was playing werewolf, One Night Ultimate Werewolf, and I had the minion, and someone else had, I think it was a minion, or it might have been a werewolf, whatever, and it must have been a werewolf, and I opened my eyes, and there was another guy who was a werewolf, and I'm looking around the table trying to find, is anyone else a werewolf? And he apparently is waving his arms about everywhere and like jumping up and down, and I didn't notice because like I could only see one point at a time, and we were playing in we're at a friend of a friend's place. It was quite dark there. There was not very much light at all. Um, he actually put his werewolf role back and took a different role for some stupid reason. and then we finished this bit, and he just bursts out laughing and just walks up down the stairs, just laughing his head off, and we're all like, "What the hell?" So, I'm pretty sure there are plenty of light and vision impaired guys and girls out there who had similar experiences. So. Absolutely, you should check the app out. We will have a link in the notes for this episode, and over on the blog you can also read about it and get the link to download it. So I have downloaded it. I haven't actually used it yet in a game of Secret Hitler or the Resistance. I do happen to own both, and I haven't played them recently. But yeah, if you're just vision impaired, it's really good high contrast. Being able to speak the stuff out if you can't read the, say, smaller text, because your own association is a larger font than if you were if you're the rest of your team members. That's the words I'm trying to get out. And so yeah, it's really good. It's fantastic, and it's as you say, it's a prototype, so there's only going to be more that can be done with it, basically.
Yeah, and I should also say, if there are any other programmers out there, the code is posted on GitHub, and if anyone wants to contribute or, for instance, develop the iOS app, it's a cross-platform project, so if you know about any of that sort of thing, just send me a message or just fork the code and do whatever you want with it.
So that's the app, but there are some other, of course, more generic technological solutions to these board game accessibility problems. Generic text-to-speech, or apps that can read text on printed material. If there are sighted people listening, may not be aware of this, but I remember first seeing an application demoed last year where this guy's got a bit of paper and he's wearing these glasses, but you can get a similar thing up on your phone, and you just point it at the text, and it takes a picture with the camera of the phone, and then it will like OCR it and read it back to you, and you can like jump around and read particular bits and stuff like that. And that technology is getting better and better all the time, so that it can process the text faster and it can be more accurate in its reading of it. So that's pretty fantastic. There are also QR codes and NFC tags, which do you want to talk a little bit more about those? Because I'm not as I say not as tech savvy. It's more that you're actually a programmer and you understand how these things are going to be working.
Yeah, and well, I use them more than you do, I guess, because you still can use much of your remaining sight. So I'm gonna go back to the text-to-speech apps that you were talking about. I actually used one recently for BSG Express that we mentioned earlier. In BSG Express, you have the same thing like in Secret Hitler, where you get passed a loyalty card, whether you are a Cylon or not a Cylon. But in BSG Express, you don't have the part with closing your eyes and revealing. The only thing that the player knows is the loyalty for himself or herself. And for this game, instead of marking the cards, I decided to use an app developed by Microsoft, and it's only available on iPhone, called Seeing AI, where you just point the camera and in real time, without even taking the picture, it can read out the text. Even if the text is not contrasted enough, it can pick it up. So it can be quite useful for things where you have like short text. In this case, it was you are a Cylon, and it reads the power that activates on the card. So it's quite fast and can be very useful for games that have low amount of cards, where you can just go through them all and then memorize the cards for the rest of the game. Other types of... I've had these ideas that these can be useful, so this kind of approach can be useful, is using QR code stickers, which I believe has been done by a company called 64 Ounce Games. They create braille kits for many popular games. I think they have over 100 games now. So yeah, they sell braille conversion kits like sleeves with braille markings, and they also have free shipping worldwide because they are subsidized by the US government, I think, and they can...
Oh, wow. And that's actually... Wow, that's really good,
yeah,
actually.
yeah, and I think the owner is called Richard, so hi Richard, maybe we can get you and interview you on this podcast. So 64 Ounce Games has for some of their games they provide QR code stickers. A QR code is a black and white image where you can encode text. So what happens is you point the camera to the QR code and it decodes the text, and it if you have a screen reader on your phone, it can read the text aloud to you. The problem I've had with QR coded apps, at least with a couple of them I've tried, is that they're not made for quickly cycling through several QR codes. So for instance, if you point it to one card, it starts reading the text that you have encoded, and usually, like when you play a game more than once, you start memorizing the cards. So once the heading is read, for instance, or the text, the beginning of the text is spoken out to you, you will quickly move to the next card, and the playback doesn't stop and cycle to the next card. So those are some of the problems that are currently present. Perhaps I will try to code my own QR code app to see if I can improve the speed, but well, we'll see how that goes. Finally, the third option that personally I haven't tried, but I saw a blind user, I think, or he was legally blind board gamer on Twitter, was using NFC tags. So how NFC tags work are, they can also be stickers where you can encode text using your phone. You can write and read from them. So basically, first you enter text, you write to them, and stick the stickers to the cards. And when you are playing, you grab your phone and you just tap the phone to the card, which then will receive the text and it can read it back to you. So that usually is faster because you can just grab a card, tap the phone, it reads the text, grab another card, tap the phone, it reads back what's encoded in the sticker.
That seems like, there are plenty of options. The number of options is only growing. The technology around it all is only going to improve, and just the more people work on it, for the purpose we're talking for here of accessibility in board games, people who are blind and visually impaired, that is just going to increase the sort of usefulness, accessibility, and all of that. So it's all pretty fantastic, I've got to say. It's like technology. It's good stuff. Well, that brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you found what we've been talking about interesting and enjoyable. If you would like to know more or are interested in the topic further, you can head over to sightless.fun, where you can read our accessibility overviews of various games, as well as other topics related to being blind and vision impaired and playing games. You can also interact with us on Twitter at Sightless Fun, or email us via sightlessfun@outlook.com. We hope you'll join us next time, and until then, happy gaming. This episode was hosted by Jed Alexander and Ertay Shashkov. Our episode editor is Alpay Shashkov. We'd also like to extend a special thank you to Fighting Windmills for allowing us to use their music in our podcast. You can find them at fightingwindmillsmk.bandcamp.com.